Hey, what's up? Yeah, Dangerous Voice, the people's choice, live and direct from New York City. And this is Growing Up a Black Nerd comics. So as a kid, um, I read a lot of comic books. I was reading comics before they were cool. I really got into it because of my older brother. My older brother had a bunch of comics from back in the day. My older brother's about 12 years older than me, and he had a bunch of comics. He had some of like the more popular comics. So he had Captain America, Spider-Man, the X-Men, and then he had even some more obscure comics. Like he had a comic called Comet Man, and I don't even think you can find that comic anymore. Like he had something like, I remember that comic in particular. He had another comic too that it was just like, yeah, I've never even heard of them superheroes, but he had a bunch of comics. I used to read them a lot before getting my own collection. And the comics that he ended up having the most of are the ones that ended up being my favorites. Like he had the most of Spider-Man. He had a lot of the old Spider-Man comics. So Spider-Man ended up being one of my favorite superheroes. He had a lot of the X-Men. I started liking the X-Men. Captain America, he had a lot of those. He had a lot of Incredible Hulk, like all things of that nature. The comic book heroes that ended up being my favorites growing up were Captain America, Spider-Man, and the Black Panther. The Black Panther I didn't catch on until later. I was about 14, 15 when I caught on to Black Panther. Like, I think when I was around 8, 9, or 10, like that's when a lot of like my friends were reading comic books. And I think when we got into our teen years, 13, 14, they stopped reading them because, it wasn't cool or it wasn't gangster. I grew up during the time of gangster rap. So like from the 90s to the early 2000s is like my formative years when I was in like middle school and high school, and part of that in elementary school. So from elementary school all the way up into high school, I was like the 90s going into the early 2000s is when I graduated high school. So like during that whole time, gangster rap and that tough gangster hyper masculine toxic masculinity culture was the thing. No, none of that stuff was cool. So comic books definitely were not a cool thing for me growing up. I'm saying if you read a comic book like around the time I was still reading comics, like 14, 15, like if you were still reading comics, you was like a nerd. And it's like that whole stereotypical classic, fucking nerd. Like that was a thing back then. Like now that's the people just look at you funny or just laugh. But at the time, like that was like a thing. But the comics that I really, and I think a lot of people dealt with Spider-Man because who reads comic books was nerds, for the sense I am a black nerd myself. So a lot of people that read those comics were nerds. And guess what Spider-Man was? Spider-Man was a nerd that became a superhero. So that's why Spider-Man, I felt like people always be like, yo, how come Spider-Man is like Spider-Man is like such a popular superhero? And I think that's really why a lot of nerdy people saw themselves in Peter Parker, because he was a nerd, and he was a really smart kid, but he was a nerd, and he got picked on and bullied and stuff, and he became a superhero. So a lot of nerds was like, they felt like they sympathized with that, and it spoke to them. So so Spider-Man ended up also having good stories and good drawings and good action. Like the way it was drawn and stuff, like it was amazing. I loved reading Spider-Man as a kid. Captain America too, because Captain America was just like the ultimate do-gooder. Like you could do no wrong. He was always right. He was always for doing the right thing, and he just always came through for his friends and for the people that he wanted to protect. And I really like that. I personally like that about Captain America, because he was like, he was just an all-around good guy. Like this is the way you should act when you're a hero, America, because he was like, he was just an all-around good guy. Like this is the way you should act when you're a hero. Like he just, I'm saying, Captain America was like almost perfect. And I used to get so mad reading it when the bad guy would actually get one up on him sometimes. You're like, come on, man, like Captain America, you kind of pulled through. I'm a kid. When I read Black Panther, though, oh my goodness, when I read Black Panther, that was like the first superhero that kind of looked like me, and it was just like, yo, who's messing with him? So who's messing with him? Like, he just, at least the first version of the story I read was like, he's a king of an African nation that's never been invaded, technologically superior and advanced more than the Western world, so more than Europe, Asia, or the United States. Like, Wakanda's way further ahead of them. They have all the cures for HIV, cancer, AIDS, everything that's ravaging us today. All the solutions all the things socio-political and economical, and all the medical issues that we have. Wakanda doesn't have any of that. They've resolved those things, or they've technologically moved past those things. And for an African country, a country full of black people that look black and brown people that look like myself, for that to be portrayed in a comic book, you're like, wow, like you wish there was being a black person just in the world, you kind of wish it was real. You're like, man, I wish this was true, because like we all know the history of the world where African and black people have been impoverished, enslaved all over the world, including on the continent of Africa, because of European colonialism. But we're not going to get into that. But anyway, but that was like, reading that, I was like, wow. Then like, just forget all the stuff about him, about all the stuff I just said about Wakanda and how Wakanda is. Black Panther was whooping ass. Like, he just, anybody that came up against him, he gave the business to. Like, the first comic he ever appeared in, the Fantastic Four came to visit him, he gave it to the whole Fantastic Four by himself. The whole Fantastic Four caught those hands, got that ass whipped. And it was just a Black Panther. It was just him. The whole thing, how they wrote that around, how they resolved it was like, the storyline was like real stupid. The storyline is real stupid. How they actually got one up on the Black Panther. It was like the Fantastic Four brought along some guy that didn't have no powers or whatever. So like, the Black Panther didn't even like do anything. They were just like, well, like they drove up in a car, and then as soon as they drove up in a car, like a flying car or whatever, he attacked them, and then they went out to, and Fantastic Four hopped out, tried to fight the Black Panther. He gave it to all of them. Like, he trapped one of them. He in the comic book, he did all this elaborate stuff to trick and to trap the Fantastic Four. Then he just left the one regular dude alone, because he was like, he's no threat, he don't got no powers. And then I think what happened was the Black Panther had captured like all of them, right? But like what the one dude did, he got out the car and he started getting to like whatever room they were in and letting them go. So like, I think he tied up Johnny Storm. He cut the ropes out of Johnny Storm. Then he went and then freed the Invisible Girl, and then freed Reed Richards. Then next thing you know, Black Panther gets overwhelmed because he didn't account for the one dude. It was like a really, I feel like it was a dumb storyline. But it's like, that's how they roped the Black Panther into the Marvel Universe, pretty much. And that was the first, but like, so the first time you see him, he's whooping ass. And then we start getting into his backstory, the Black Panther, all that stuff. Like, he gave the business to a lot of my favorite people. I was like, oh man, I really like this character. Like, yeah, he gave it to him. Like, he gave it to Captain America. He gave it to Wolverine. The Winter Soldier. Even in the movies where you see the Black Panther and the Winter Soldier fighting, or anybody fighting the Black Panther forever, he's given the business to everybody. Like especially in the Winter Soldier. If you watch the Winter Soldier movie, the only person that the Winter Soldier can't fight one-on-one was the Black Panther. Like, he giving it to Cap, he giving it to Scarlet Witch, he's giving it to everybody. Iron Man, Black Panther come, he whooping that ass. That's why he run half the time. That's why he was running. Remember, he wasn't really running like that. Like, they would find him, he would fight him, and then you whoop that ass. Minnesota whoop that ass and go on about his way. Nope, fighting the Black Panther. Oh, I can't beat him. Gets to running. Then everybody's chasing him. Like, that whole movie, they was chasing the Winter Soldier. Why? Because Black Panther was whooping that ass. He ain't went that work. I like the Black Panther because of all those things I just named. Like, he was the African king. He was super woke. If you read the comics, how woke he was, just whooping ass, just everything about the Black Panther is dope. Then the movie just made it kind of forever. Like, oh my goodness, the movies just did him justice so much. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman, by the way. That was very, very sad news for me to hear. I was on vacation, and as soon as I heard it, we watching Black Panther tonight, and nobody disagreed with me. So we did that. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman. But yeah, that was my experience. You know, this is gonna be a short video. This is my experience growing up reading comics, growing up a black nerd reading comics. Like, I told you I grew up in the early 90s, late 2000s. You know, go from like the mid 90s going into the early 2000s, and I was reading comics, and my parents used to buy me comics all the time. And the comics were cheap at the time. Like, I guess like what was happening was like the old comics, like the ones from like the 50s and the 60s, like people were selling those for thousands of dollars. So there was a big boom in the comic, and there was a big boom as far as the comic book industry in the 80s and 90s, because those old comics were selling for so much money. People were buying up comics and then keeping them, saying, okay, this is gonna be worth money someday. But really, it's only those older comics were making money. Maybe some of those comics you bought in the 80s and 90s will be worth money now, but at the time people were buying them. It's like, well, this ain't gonna be worth anything, because you know it's a boom. It was printed during a boom, so people were holding on to these worthless comics, and then people were like, yo, this comic ain't gonna be worth anything, and down the line, so people stopped buying comics because of that reason. It's like now those same comics will probably be worth money because enough time has passed. But that was back in like the 80s and 90s, when the comics from the 40s and 50s were going to be worth money. So, yeah, but when I was reading comics, especially in high school, nobody was like, "You reading comics? Like, how old are you?" Like now, somebody reading comics now, like that's not even frowned upon. I'm like, "Oh, snap! You read comics? Oh, bro, like who's your favorite people, and who's your this?" Like now, that's a conversation. And now that even now, like people come to me knowing that I read the comics about stuff. They come to me, it's like, yo, so what happened in the comic? Like, I saw what happened in the movie. What happened in the comic? That happens a lot now, like a whole bunch. Like every time like a new Marvel movie, something come up, I get a phone call from somebody, whether it's somebody in my family, a friend, it's like, yo, so what happened in the comic actually? Like, I'm like, and I tell them, oh, this is what happened in the comic. This is the one I read. And, you know. What's up, y'all? Dangerous Voice of People's Choice, live and direct from New York City. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. But I'm going to say thank you for checking me out. If you want to stay connected with me, my social media is in the description. So go down below in the description, and you will have all my social medias there. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's all there. Make sure you stay connected with me. I think my Discord is down there too. If not, you can find my Discord on one of my other social media events titles. But thank you for coming through. Thank you for watching the video. I appreciate you. I love you. Bye.